Hello, everybody. Welcome. You know, when people come to visit at my home, I take the time to remember how important it is to welcome them. And this doesn't require that we use the word welcome, though that word is very powerful because in our culture we hear it very irregularly. Unless it has become common these days to hear it when we enter a shop or go to the cashier. We may hear the phrase "welcome in." But all of us recognize that as a sort of a gambit, right? It's not that it's never authentic. It's that the roots of its possible authenticity have been compromised by corporate culture. We know that most of the work slaves are unhappy and would prefer to be somewhere doing something actually meaningful and humanly beautiful or powerful. Instead, they're serving us ice cream or taking our orders. So we know that kind of a welcome is rarely authentic. And interestingly, in the United States, at least, I don't know how it is elsewhere. I presume this is probably mostly a U.S. phenomenon. We have these things called doormats, and these doormats often contain, they often present the word welcome inscribed upon them, and then we wipe our, possibly disgusting shoe bottoms on these mats, thereby denigrating, in a sense, the welcome message, which is no longer human to human. Now it's become a convenience inscribed on our doormats. And we use this idea of doormat as an insult sometimes in the West. When analyzing relational transactions, we may say, oh yes, he, she, they are using so-and-so as a doormat, or so-and-so has, become a doormat, or which is cruel. A lot of the things in the United States that are understood to be humorous are actually vicious in various ways. In ways that resemble the peculiar viciousness of children in the latter grades of elementary school, though some get an early start, and perhaps high school, right? They have these hazing rituals that are sometimes horrifically lethal, but are often just vicious for any child who's not securely established in their own psyche and relational solar systems, constellations, right? But I take the guest-host relationship very seriously. In some alternative, some cultures different from my own birth culture, this matter is taken with very significant, momentous concern. In Zen Buddhism, which is a tradition I have some history with, the guest-host binary pairing is often used as a teaching instrument. And the way in which it is presented is very similar to the Tao symbol. Right? The guest inside is host, the host inside is guest. These roles can transform in a creative, dance-like way when humans attend them intelligently, together. I cannot remember the word, but there's a word that means something resembling kindly appropriate. It's a word in Japanese for when a guest brings a small, carefully considered gift. To the host they may visit. I hear the vibratory drumming of a woodpecker, probably pileated. That's the main kind I see around here. So, when people come to my house, which is fairly infrequent, frankly, I take care to welcome them. It is an appreciated kindness to offer them various comforts. Right? If I were wealthy and I had a big house, I would give them slippers. If they were an extremely important family member or an elder, I might actually offer them a foot bath where I would wash their feet. This is a very old traditional grace in some places. Offer them, a place to wash up, refresh themselves. A moment. He's nervous because there's not usually another person. I was trying to feed one of the local Stellards jays that knows me, and there was someone standing nearby. A place to wash up, refreshments, tea, water, sometimes spirits, alcohol. If appropriate for children, a toy. Not that we should addict them to sugar, but candy or a cookie or something. Ensure they are warm. Check in, right, and see what will put my guests at ease. And the role of guest is similarly potentially complex. Because the guest's responses to such offerings comprise gifts of a different kind. They are the gift of honorable reception, to receive with grace, creative intelligence, to honor what is offered. And in case it isn't clear, this guest host doublet is part of how humans generally relate socially, relationally, romantically, intellectually. It runs very deep once one becomes aware of it. There are associated binary concepts to give and receive, to make, to consume, to press, to pull or coil, to reach outward, to reach inward. The sun and the moon, the wolf and the cat, light and darkness, waking and dreaming. There's a kind of wokish resistance in our time around binary language. And I'm not really sure what I need to say about that at the moment, other than there's something to be learned from such conceptions. And they're also, when misapplied or if they become too universal, they're also dangerous. Where tradition is malformed, it's important to break with it, but to dismiss it altogether is often to, eliminate the nest with the poop, right? The hawk is here and active. Rays of the sunlight through the trees. You know, in our human experience and in our interiority, there's a natural inflow and outflow, right? That is constant, rhythmic, and works best when many different kinds of that which is drawn in and that which is emitted, when the many different rhythms of the inflow and the outflow harmonize so that there is a symphony, as if each form of inflow and outflow that we are capable of producing, that we naturally participate in, is a musical instrument, right? And there's a central conductor that all the players follow together to synchronize. And when this happens, health and well-being follow quite naturally. So too what we refer to as luck. Good healing, good sleep, good dreaming, good digestion, good metabolic synchronization. All of these things follow naturally from synchronizing the rhythms, and when we are younger, they synchronize far more naturally, or at least they did in my experience growing up in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, so forth, when there were far less frequent interruptions and desynchronizations, and vastly less machines. But we live in a modern world now, and so we must help each other to cope by attending the possibilities of helping each other's synchronizations. And sometimes this can be naturally relational rather than consciously, rather than having to attend it with too much head, right? Too much brain. You can see when people who are fond of one another, when they come together, they naturally give each other reassurance, recognition, love, touch, hugging, kissing. You know, for males, traditionally, we shake hands, which is a very complex, old ritual. That most of us are trained to. Or some of us, fewer perhaps these days. Men from my father's generation, in my experience, tend to be resistant to hugging, what we call hugging. It's a little too touchy-feely and presents the danger of male-to-male affection that borders on or descends into the erotic. And that specific danger was severely anathema to my father's generation, who came up in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Back then, the ideals appropriate to the man, culturally and traditionally, were self-sufficiency, particularly in combat, the ability to defend against any attacker, keeping your interiority to yourself, very private interiority, carry your pain alone, speak not of it, this kind of thing, stiff upper lip. Probably British colloquialism there, and so forth. My father, in my early life, seemed, looking back on it anyway, analytically now, seemed very concerned that my sensitivity would make me very vulnerable to abuse by other males. Rarely, almost never had that effect. I grew up in a different place and time than he did, and he wasn't sensitive to that. I guess he thought males are males. And, they can be. There's lots of places where the old ethos and traditions are still powerfully common. Obviously, in this recent portion of my talk, I am encroaching on gender stereotypes. And I grew up in the time when feminism wasn't new, but it began to capture a broader segment of the population and spread across the nation. When I was a child, in certain years, perhaps 6, 7, 8, 9, my mother became a feminist. I would regularly read Ms. Magazine in the 70s. See, I must have, I wasn't quite, that's the right ages. I'm not sure what year it was founded. I remember a record album called Free to Be You and Me, a pin and poster, war is unhealthy, or war is, devastating to children and other living things. And I used to attend meetings of the National Organization for Women in Stockton in the evenings for about probably a year or more in the 70s. And quite frankly, that was probably my first exposure to human cultures that were intelligent and academic. Back then, it certainly wasn't clear to me that many of the elder women in those meetings were probably gay. I mean, almost certainly, in many cases. I don't think it mattered. And they were happy to have me there until around the time when I began to naturally masculinize as an adolescent, so to speak. Once I was starting to become more man than child, my mom, essentially said that I was no longer welcome. Though I'm sure she phrased it in a gentler way. That was a painful shift. I looked up to many of those women. Some of them were mentors. Many of them were deeply troubled. Attempting to find habitable roles in a transitory and sometimes militant environment. But I recall these matters with a feeling of warmth and gratitude. Those women were among the first intelligent humans I ever really came across, other than in books, where the authors of the books were clearly, they might as well have been a different species of Homo sapien compared to what was commonly encountered in my day-to-day life. And I wanted to be like them. I wanted to join their number. Perhaps I at least partly have succeeded finally in my late age. Welcoming guest and host. It is clear that there is a branch of martial arts where softness prevails, receptivity wins every time, or most times. And it is surprisingly difficult to embody deeply receptive softness. In practice, when someone puts hands on one's body, the intuitive response is to form up, stiffen. In a practitioner who's achieved softness, that stiffening is enough to prevail immediately in any kind of physical contest. In most cases, right? There are those who have studied the forming up to such a degree that their sensitivity is actually what they depend on, so they stay soft until they become rigid, and then that forming up, that stiffening becomes penetrating and devastating in combat. Not that I'm concerned much with combat. I'm much more concerned with relation and awareness and insight, healing, so forth. It is the moon cycle now for somewhat 6-7 days maybe, where the raptors mate. But they have been mating already for some time here in San Francisco. You may have heard some hawk calls. The hawks their voices became much higher. They took on a much higher pitch recently and became much more intense and sort of agitated sounding. The blue herons are the males are sitting in the nests, sometimes making displays in the evening. The owl choruses are common in the evenings here. Great horned owls. The coyotes may already have pups. I heard such a clamor from the coyotes last night on the way home. I recorded it a bit, though the recording is not great because I'm just using my phone mic. Yeah, it was an incredible chorus of coyotes. Perhaps around like 8:30 p.m. No moon out. Cloudy, rainy. So, when I began this recording, I thought I might try to share. This is a little bit embarrassing, but I thought I might try to share my minimal Blackfoot vocabulary with my listeners. I've learned a few words and phrases from my friend Ryan Firstdiver, whose channel I certainly recommend, especially his phonology videos, which is the study of the transformations in the living places, the creatures, plants, insects, and animals over a specific moon cycle, of which there are either 12 or 13, depending on whether or not the raptors set up nests in a specific cycle. If they don't, I think it's this one, right? If they don't nest yet, there will be 13 moons that year. But yeah, I strongly recommend his phenology videos. So, Blackfoot greeting is Oki. Oki. A word for, like how we would use the word, I'm going to get a lot of this wrong, by the way. I'm not a native Blackfoot speaker. I'm not even a skillful Blackfoot speaker. I'm just going to do my best. A word for that is similar to okay or yes is ah, right? A-A-H or A-A-A-H. Good morning is Etomix skanatani. Etomix, good, skanatani, morning. Good afternoon or evening is something like, means like good heat or good brightness or something. Etomix sistiko. Etomix sistiko. I'm glad to hear your voice. Complex phrase because it has a peculiar sound in it. One moment. Iksokapi, which can also mean good. Iksokapi kitochtos. Kitochtos. It's kind of a sound, if I've got it right, which I may not. Iksokapi kitochtos. Sounds a little bit like Klingon, that last word. There's a very important phrase which in English the translation is something like just keep going, don't give up. Stomachak omanist owawakakt. Stomachak omanist owawakakt. This phrase is very powerful because it reminds a native speaker of something an English person will have no experience of, but is very important. Which is in the winter, the old bull bison, they will crack through the snow with their powerful necks, heads, and horns. They will crack through the snow to forge a path for the herd to get to food so they do not perish. So they rescue the herd by this activity. And without the old bulls, who are probably sterile by now, the herds cannot survive the snow. And this phrase refers to the courage and steadfastness of the old bulls in this activity, as I understand it. a moment.
I read that question like 8 times, and I was like, I don't know what they're asking me. I was like, I cannot figure
It's
this
quite possible that if I were reading this question, it wouldn't be able to answer it. That's just how you describe it.
Yeah. It's like, here's an example of something where I know the concept, but I'm just utterly confused.
Very ancient person should never be
Let's
read.
see. The sun is Natotsi. Note the stop. Natotsi. The moon is Koko Mikitsum. The som, phoneme, is associated with the moon, I believe. There is a kind of a traditional mythic figure who isn't exactly just a trickster in the way Western people think of Coyote. I think he is called Napi, and he relates to the early, when the humans were just new. I think. The morning star, or Venus, is Ipisoas. He is the child of the sun and the moon. Lives in the... But is also, in a way... Oh, by the way, that sound, those are opspini, the white cheeks. Opspini. Well, I'm doing a little better than I thought I would. I wish I knew the word for the false morning star. Which correlates with Jupiter. This is cool. Somebody playing clarinet, but they're playing like... Yeah, very beautiful. They're playing like Indian or traditional scales, like you'd expect to hear in the idiosyncratic trope of the snake charmer. Okay, what else? I'm reaching now. We will speak together again soon is Katetamat Sip Sit Sat. And the sat, it's almost like it has a hard TH at the end. Sip Sit Sat. The microphone probably reproduces these sounds very poorly. And as I understand it, it means something like the sound of the wind in the leaves of the trees we will make together again soon. It's a hopeful recognition of future, communion. This is probably the extent of my active vocabulary, though I know a few other words and phrases. They are specific to ceremony, not the same as vocabulary. I think I understand is something like Inistan. And I must learn what I would call the key words for tree, star. I know sun and moon, but I don't know star. Tree, star, hand, eye, dream, mouth, friend, mother, father, mirror. These are food. These are crucial root words in any language. There are others, of course. What I was doing was giving a partial list of what I call holophores, which are the root concepts from which all subconcepts inherit their identity and connotative meaning, right? Without a concept for world, it's pretty hard to have the concept being or person. You have to have, there has to be like a family concept and an animal concept and organism, being, all these concepts. Our languages are very tree-like, and down near the roots of those trees are crucial concepts. I think for today, I will close for now. I thank you for joining me, and I look forward to learning together again very soon. May your ways and dreams and lives be beautiful and filled with inspiration, love, play, opportunity, healing, and joy. Katedamat sip sit sat.